Hello, my dear hatchlings, we're live again! Happy Friday! Yay! Let's see, gonna move it over here. Okay. No, no. There we go. Uh, also, please excuse the if you hear any like fan thingy. It's like very warm now. So yeah, hopefully you guys not gonna pick it up or anything like that. But yeah, it is warm today. Don't get me wrong. Then you don't need to use much electricity, am I right? Cause that's expensive. But it's really nice seeing like a clear blue sky and trees finally waking up. Ah, it's so nice seeing greenery again. I forget how nice spring can be. Although I feel a little bit bad for the people with allergies, you know. Oh, they don't really like this time of year when they are sneezing their butt off, you know. So let's see. And I'm gonna see if I can find another book to read. In worst case, I'm just gonna game some stuff. So yeah, wait, what's this? TwitchCon Europe meet and greet lineup is live now. Oh, wait, what? TwitchCon is today? God damn. Oh, it's the Europe TwitchCon, it seems like. Also, happy May, everybody. Hopefully, you guys are having a great time. Okay, let's see here. Now we should start. Let's see. Gonna do it like that. The doggers are eagerly awaiting. Oh goodness, it felt like I was about to sneeze. There we go. Okay. Aww. Let's see. One loaf. Well, technically, none of you guys are loafing. They are like in a half ball. Cute. So adorable. Ah, so cute. Anyhow, let's continue. Excuse my sniffles. It's not allergy. It might be something else. Okay, let's see here. Chapter 20th. Jonathan Hawker's Journal. October 1st. Evening. I found Thomas Snellings in his house at Bethnal Green, but unhappily he was not in the condition to remember anything. The very prospect of beer, which my expected coming had opened to him, had proven too much. And he had begun too early on his expected debauch. I learned, however, from his wife, who seemed to a decent poor soul, that he was only the assistant of Smollett, who of the two mates was the responsible person. So off I drove to the Woolworth and found Mr. Joseph Smollett at home and in his shirt sleeves taking a late tea out of a saucer. He is decent, intelligent fellow, instinctively a good, my bad, reliable type of workman, and with a headpiece of his own. He remembered all about the incident of the boxes, and from a wonderful dog-eared notebook, which he produced from some mysterious receptacle about the seat of his trousers, and which had hieroglyphical entries in thick, half obliterated pencil. He gave me the destination of the boxes. There were, he said, 6 in the cartload, which he took from Carfax and left at 197 Chicksand Street, Mile End, Newtown, and another 6 which he deposited at Jamaica Lane, Bermondsey. If then the Count meant to scatter these ghastly fugitives of his over London, these places were chosen as a first of delivery, so that later he might distribute more fully. The systematic manners in which this was done made me think that he could not mean to confine himself to 2 sides of London. He was now fixed on the far east, on the northern shore, on the east of the southern shore, on the south. The north and west were surely never meant to be left out of his diabolical scheme, let alone the city itself, and the very heart of fashionable London. In the south west and west, I went back to Smollett and asked him if he could tell us if any other boxes had been taken from Carfax. He replied, "Well, Governor, you had treated me very handsomely, and I had given him half a sovereign. And I'll tell you all I know. I hear a man by the name of Bloxam say fortnight ago in R and Ounce and Pinch's Alley, as how he had his mate and a rare dusty job in an old house of Purfleet. There aren't many such jobs in here, and I'm thinking that maybe Sam Bloxers could tell you something." I asked if he could tell me where to find him. I told him that if he could get me an address, it would be worth another half sovereign to him. So he gulped down the rest of his tea and stood up, saying that he was going to begin the search then and there. At the door he stopped and said, "Look here, Governor, there aren't no sense in me keeping you here. I may find Sam soon, or I may not. But anyhow, he ain't like to be in a way to tell you much tonight. Sam is a rare one when he starts on the booze. If you can give me an envelope with a stamp on it and put your address on it, I'll find out where Sam is to be found and post you tonight. But you better be up at soon in the morning. Never mind the booze the night before." This was all principle. So one of the children went off with a penny to buy an envelope and a sheet of paper, and kept the change, and to keep the change. When she came back, I addressed the envelope and stamped it, and when Smollett had again faithfully promised to post the address when found, I took my way home, where on the track anyhow. I'm tired tonight, and I want to sleep. Mina is fast asleep, and looks a little bit too pale. Her eyes look as though she had been crying. Poor dear, I've no doubt it frets her to be kept in the dark. It may make her doubtly anxious about me and the others, but it is the best as it is. It is better to be disappointed and worried in such a way now than to have her nerve broken. The doctors are quite right to insist on her being kept out of this dreadful business. I must be firm, for on me this particular burden of silence must rest. I shall not ever enter on such subject with her under any circumstances. Indeed, it may not be a hard task after all, for she herself has become oh my gosh, reticent on the subject, and has not spoken of the Count or his doing ever since we told her of our decision. October 2nd, evening. As long as trying an exciting day, by first post I got my directed envelope with a dirty scrap of paper enclosed, on which was written with a carpenter's pencil in a sprawling hand, Sam Block Sam, Crans. 4 Potter's Court, Bartlett Street, Walworth. Ask for the despite. Yeah. I got the letter in bed and rose without waking Mina. She looked heavy and sleeping and pale, and far from well. I determined not to wake her, but that when I should return from this new search, I would rearrange for her going back to Exeter. I think she would be happier in her own home, with her daily task to interest her. Then begin here amongst us, and in ignorance. I only saw Dr. Seward for a moment, and told him where I was off to, promising to come back and tell the rest so soon as I should have found out anything. I drove to Walworth and found, with some difficulty, Miss Potter's Count, and Mr. Swollett's spelling misled me. As I asked for Potter's Court, Potter's Court instead of Potter's Court. However, when I had found the court, I had no difficulty in discovering Corcoran's lodging houses. When I asked the man who came to the door for the dispute, he shook his head and said, "I don't know. Ain't no such person here. I have never heard of all in my blooming days. Don't believe ain't nobody of the kind of living here or anywhere." I took out Smollett's letter and I read it. It seems to me that the lesson of the spelling of the name of the Count might guide me. What are you? I asked. "I'm the Despiti," he answered. I saw at once that I was on the right track. Phonetic spelling had again misled me. A half-crown tip put the deputy's knowledge at my disposal, and I learned that Mr. Bloxman, who had slept off the remaining of his beer on the previous night at Corran's, had left off his work at Polar at 5 o'clock that morning. He could not tell me where the place of work was situated, but he had a vague idea that it was some kind of newfangled warehouse, and with this slender clue, I had to start for Poplar. It was 12 o'clock before I got any satisfactory hint of such a building, and this I got at a coffee shop where some workmen were having their dinner. One of them suggested that they were being erected at Cross Angel Street a new cold storage building, as it suited the condition of a newfangled warehouse. I at once drove to it. An interviewer with a supply gatekeeper and a souffleur foreman, both of whom were appearsed with the coin of the realm, put me on the track of Bloxam. He was sent of one of my suggestions that I was willing to pay his day's wager to his foreman for the privilege of asking him a few questions on a private matter. He was a smart enough fellow, though rough of speech and bearing. When I had promised to pay for his information and giving him a earnest, he told me that he had made 2 journeys between Carfax and a house in Piccadilly, and had taken from this house to the ladder nine great boxes, main heavy ones, with a horse and a cart hired by him for this purpose. I asked him if he could tell me the number of the house in Piccadilly, to which he replied, "Well, Governor, I forgot the number, but it was only a few doors from the big white church, or something of the kind. No long build. It was a dusty old house, too, out of nothing, to the dustiest of the houses we took the blooming boxes from." "How did you get in if both houses were empty?" There was the old party that engaged me waiting in the house of the pure fleet. He helped me to lift the boxes and put them in the drawer. Curse me, but he was the strongest chap I ever struck, and him and an old fella with a white mustache. One that thin you would think he wouldn't throw a shadow. How this face thrilled me, thrilled through me. Why, you took up its end of OD boxes like there were pounds of tea, and me, a puffing and blowing a Ford I could upend mine anyhow, and I'm no chicken either. How this how did you get into the house in Piccadilly? I asked. He was there too. He must have started off and got there before me, for when I rang the doorbell, he kept on and opening the door itself and helped me carry the boxes into and all. "The whole nine?" I asked. "Yep, and there were 5 in the first load and 4 in the second. It was mainly dry work, and I don't so well remember on how I got them." I interrupted him. "Were the boxes left in the hall?" "Yeah, it was it all, and there was nothing else in it." I made one more attempt to further matter. "You didn't have any key?" "Never used no key nor think. The old gentleman, he opened the door itself, and shut it again when I drove off. I don't remember the last time. But there was the beer." "And you can't remember the number of the house?" "No, sir, but you need not have no difficulty about it. It's an high, it's an high on with a stone front with a bow on it, and high steps up to the door. I know them steps, having had to carry the boxes up with 3 loafers and come around to earn a copper. The old gentleman give them a shillings, and they, seeing them got that much, they wanted more. But you took one of them by the shoulder and was like to throw I'm down the steps, till the lot of them went away cursing. I thought that with this description I could find the house, so having paid my friend for his information, I started off for Piccadilly and gained a new painful experience. The Count could, it was evident, handle the earth boxes himself. If so, time was precious, for now that he had achieved a certain amount of distribution, he could, by choosing his own time, complete the task unobservably. Unobservant. At Piccadilly Circus, I discarded my cab and walked westward. Beyond the Union Constitutional, I came across the house described and was satisfied that it was the next of the lair arranged by Dracula. The house looked as though it had been long under unattended. The windows were encrusted with dust and the shutters were up. All the framework was black with time, and from the iron the paint had almost scaled away. It was evident that up to lately there had been a large notice board in the front of the balcony. It had, however, been roughly torn away, and uprights which had supported it all still remaining. Behind the rails of the balcony I saw that there were some loose boards whose raw edges looked white. I could have given a good deal to have been able to see the notice board intact, as it would perhaps have been given some clue to the ownership of the house. I remember my experience of the investigation and purchase of Carfax, and I could not but feel that if I could find the former owner, there might be some means discovered of gaining access to the house. There was at present nothing to be learned from the Piccadilly side, and nothing could be done. So I went around to the back to see if anything could be gathered from this quarter. The mews were attractive, the Piccadilly houses being mostly in occupation. I asked one of two of the grooms and helpers who I saw around if they could tell me anything about the empty house. One of them said they had heard it had lately been taken, but they couldn't say from whom. He told me, however, that up to very lately there had been a notice board of for sale up, and that perhaps Mitchell and Sons and Candy, the house agents, could tell me something. As he thought he remembered seeing the name of the firm on the board, I did not wish to seem too eager or to let my information known or guess too much. So thanking him in the usual manner, I strolled away. It was now grown dusk, and the autumn night was closing in. So I did not lose any time, having learned the address of Mitchell's son and Candy from the directory at the Berksley. I was soon at their office in Sackville Street. The gentleman who saw me was particularly southern in manner, but uncommunicative in equal proportions, having once told me that the Piccadilly house, which throughout our interview he called a mansion, was sold. He considered my business as concluded. When I asked who had purchased it, he opened his eye a thought wider and paused for a few minutes before replying. It is. Oops, accidentally did that. My bad. It is sold, sir. Pardon me, I said, with equal politeness, but I have a special reason for wishing to know who'd purchased it. Again he paused longer and raised his eyebrows still more. It is sold, sir, was again his languorous reply. Surely, I said, do you not mind letting me know so much? But I do mind, he answered. The affair of their clients are absolutely safe in their hands of Mitchell's Sons and Candy. This was manifestly a prig of the first water, and there was no use arguing with him. I thought I had best meet him on his own ground, so I said, your clients, sir, are happy in having so resolute a guardian of their confidence. I am myself a professional man. Here I handed him my card. In this instance, I am not prompted by curiosity. I act on the part of Lord Godalming, who wishes to know something of the property which was, he understood, lately for sale. These words put a different complexion on affairs. He said, "I would like to oblige you if I could, Mr. Hawkers, and especially would I like to oblige his lordship. We once carried out a small matter of renting some chambers for him when he was honorably Arthur Holmwood. If you let, if you will let me have his lordship's address, I will consult the house on the subject and will, in any case, communicate with his lordship by tonight's post. I will. It will be a pleasure if we can so far deviate from our rules as to give the acquired information to his lordship. I wanted to secure a friend and not to make an enemy, so I thanked him and gave him the address at Dr. Seward's and came away. It was now dark, and I was tired and hungry. I got a cup of tea at the Athered Bread Company. Bread Company, my goodness. And came down to Pearl Fleet by the next train. I found all the others at home. Mina was looking tired and pale, but she made a gallant effort to be bright and cheerful. It wronged my heart to think that I had to keep anything from her, and so caused her inquisitively. Thank God, this will be the last night for her looking on at our conference, and feeling the sting of our not showing our confidence. It took all my courage to hold on to the wise resolution of keeping her out of our grim task. She seemed somehow more reconciliated, or else the very subject seemed to have had become repugnant to her, for when any accident allusion is made, she actually shuddered. I am glad we made our resolution in time, as which such a feeling as this, our growing knowledge, would be torture to her. I I could not tell the others of the day's discovery till we were alone. So after dinner, followed by a little music to save appearance even among us ourselves, I took Mina to her room and left her to go to bed. The dear girl was more affectionate with me than ever, and clung to me as though she would detain me. But there was much to be talked of, and I came away. Thank God, the ceasing of telling things has made no difference between us. When I came down again, I found the others all gathered around the fire in the study. In the train I had written my diary so far, and simply read it off to them as the best meaning of letting them get abreast of my own information. When we had finished, Van Helsing said, "This has been a great day's work, friend Jonathan. Doubtless we are on the track of the missing boxes. If we find them, all in the house, then our work is near the end. But if there are some missing, we must search until we find them. Then we shall make our final coup and hunt the wretch to his real death." We all sat silent a while, then all at once Mr. Morris spoke. "Say, how are we going to get into the house?" "We got into the other," answered Lord Godalming quickly. "But Art, this is different. We broke house at Carfax, but we had night and a walled park to protect us. It will be a mighty different thing to commit burglary in Piccadilly, neither by day or night. I confess I don't see how we are going to get in unless the agency duck can find us a key of some sort. The agency duck? I could so see a duck in a little police uniform. Oh, that would be so cute. I do like ducks and geese, they are adorable. Oh, goose. Because geese is multiple. But imagine having a Canadian geese army. Ah. Hmm. See? Lord Godalming's brows contrasted, and he stood up and walked about the room. By and by he stopped and said, turning from one to another of us, Quincy's head is level. This burglary business is getting serious. We got off once all right, but we have now a rare job on hand. Unless we can find the Count's key basket. As nothing could well be done before morning, and as it would be at least advisable to wait until Lord Godalming's should hear from Mitchell's, we decided not to take any active steps before breakfast time. For a good while we sat and smoked, discussing the matters in its various lights and bearings. I took the opportunity of bringing this diary right up to the moment. I'm very sleepy and shall go to bed. Just a line. Mina sleeps soundly and her breathing is regular. Her forehead is puckered up into little wrinkles as though she thinks even in her sleep. She's still too pale, but does not look so haggard as she did this morning. Tomorrow will, I hope, mend all this. She will be herself at home in Exeter. Oh, but I am sleepy. Dr. Seward's diary, October 1. I am puzzled afresh about Rainfield. His mood changed so rapidly that I find it difficult to keep touch of them, as they always mean something more than his own well-being. They form a more than interesting study. This morning, when I went to see him after his repulse of Van Helsing, his manners was that of a man commanding destiny. He was, in fact, commanding destiny subjectively. He did not really care for any of the things of mere earth. He was in the clouds and looked down on all the weaknesses and wants of us poor mortals. I thought I would improve the occasion and learn something, so I asked him, "What about the flies this time?" These times. He smiled on me. He smiled on me in quite a superior sort of way, such a smile as would have become the face of Malvolio. As he answered me, "The fly, my dear sir, has one striking feature. The wings are typical of the aerial powers of the psychic fatalities. The ancients did well when they typified the soul as a butterfly." I thought that I would push his analogy to its utmost logical, so I said quickly, "Oh, it is a soul? Oh, it is a soul you are after now, is it?" His madness foiled his reason, and a puzzled look spread over his face as, shaking his head in a decision which I had but seldom seen in him, he said, Oh no, oh no. I want no soul. Life is all I want. Here he brightened up. I'm pretty indifferent about it at the present. Life is all right. I have all I want. You must get a new patient, doctor, if you wish to study sophag sophagy. Yeah, I'm not reading that word more. I'm sure my dear English people here, or native English speakers, would probably be able to read this with much more proficient in their skills. Don't you agree, Tama? Indeed. Although Tama, I must quite say, you're quite affectionate today. Yes. Let's see here. This puzzled me a little bit, so I drew him on. Then you command life. You're a god, I suppose. He smiled with indefinitely being superiority. Oh no, far being it from me to arrogate to myself the attribution of the deity. I am not even concerned in his especially spiritual doings. If I may state my intellectual position, I am, so far as concerned things purely terrestrial, somewhat in the position which Enosh occupied spiritually. This was a poser to me. I could not at the moment recall Enoch's Eno's apophthegms. So I had to ask a simple question, though I felt that by doing it, I was lowering myself in the eyes of the lunatic. And why with Enoch? Because he walks with God. I could not see the analogy, my bad, but did not like to admit it, so I hacked back to what he had denied. So you don't care about life and you don't want souls. Why not? I put my question quickly and somewhat sternly, on the purpose to disconcert him. The effort succeeded. For an instant, he unconsciously relapsed into his old servile manner, bent low before me, and actually fawned upon me as he replied, I don't want any souls, indeed, indeed, I don't. I couldn't use them if I had them. They would be no matter of use to me. I could not eat them, or sadly stopped, and the old cunning look spread over his face, like a wind swept over the surface of the water. And doctor, as to life, what is it after all? When you got all you required, and you know that you will never want, that it's all. I have friends, good friends, like you, Dr. Seward. This was said with a leer of inex, inex, uh, one sec. Inexpressible cunning. I know that I shall never lack the means of life. I think that though the cloudiness of his insanity is so some oh my goodness, antagonism, in me, for he at once fell back on the last refuge of such as he. He dodged silence. After a short time I saw that for the present it was useless to speak to him. He was sulky, and so I came away. Let's see here. Oh. Later in the day he sent for me. Ordinarily I would not have come without special reasons, but just as a present I am so interested in him that I will gladly make an effort. Besides, I am glad to have anything to help pass the time. Parker is out, following up clues, and so are Lord Godalming and Quincy. Van Helsing sits in my study, poring over their records, prepared by the hawkers. They seem to think that by accurate knowledge of all the details he will light up on some clue. He does not wish to be disturbed in the work, without cause. I would have taken him with me to see the patient, only I thought that after his last repulse he might not care to go again. There was also another reason. Reinfeldt might not speak so freely before a third person as when he and I were alone. I found him sitting in the middle of the floor on his stool, a pose which is generally indicative of some mental energy on his part. When I came in, he said at once, as though the question had been waiting on his lips, "What about souls?" It was evident that my summary had been correct. Unconscious cerebration was doing its work, even with the lunatic. I determined to have the murders out. "What about them yourself?" I asked. He did not reply for a moment, but looked all around him, and up and down, as though he expected to find some inspiration for an answer. "I don't want any souls," said feebly. He said in a feeble, apologetic way. The matter seemed preying on his mind, and so I determined to use it. To be cruel, only to be kind. So I said, "You like life. You want life." "Oh, yes. But that is all right. You needn't worry about that." "But," I asked, "how are we to get the life without getting the soul also?" This seemed to puzzle him, so I followed it up. "A nice time you'll have some time where you're flying out there, with the souls of thousands of flies and spiders and birds and cats buzzing and twittering and moaning all around you. You got their lives, you know, and you must put up with their souls." Something seems to affect his imagination, for he put his finger to his ears and shut his eyes, screwing them up tightly, just as a small boy does when his face is being soaped. There was something pathetic in it that touched me. It also gave me a lesson, for it seems that before me was a child, only a child, though the features were worn and the stubble on the jaw was white. It was evident he was undergoing some progress of mental disturbance. And knowing how his past moods have let's see here interpret things seemingly foreign to himself, I thought I would enter into his mind as well as I could and go with him. The first step was to restore confidence, so I asked, speaking pretty loud so that he would hear me through his closed ears, "Would you like some sugar to get your flies around again?" He seemed to wake up all at once and shook his head. With a laugh, he replied, "Not much. Flies are poor things, after all." After a pause, he added, "But I don't want their souls bustling around me all the same." "Or spiders," I went on. "Blow spiders. What's the use of spiders? There isn't anything in them to eat." Or he stopped suddenly, as though reminded of a forbidden topic. So, I thought to myself, this is the second time he suddenly stopped at the word drink. What does it mean? Wainfield seemed himself aware of having made a lapse, for he hurried on, as though to distract my attention from it. "I don't take any stocks at all in such matters. Rats and mice and such small deer. As Shakespeare has it, chicken feed from the ladder, they might be called. I passed all sorts of nonsense. You might as well ask a man to eat molecules with a pair of chopsticks as to try to interest me about the less carnivora, when I know of what it is before me." "I see," I said. "You want big things that you can make your teeth meet in. How would you like to breakfast on an elephant?" "What ridiculous nonsense are you talking?" He was getting too wide awake, so I thought I would press him hard. "I wonder," I said reflectively, "what's an elephant soul like?" The effect I desired was obtained, for he at once felt from his high horse and became a child again. "I don't want an elephant soul, or a soul at all," he said. For a few moments he sat despondently. Suddenly he jumped onto his feet, with his eyes blazing and all the signs of intense cerebral excitement. "To hell with you and all your souls," he shouted. "Why do you plague me about souls? Wouldn't I got enough to worry about, and pain to distract me already, without thinking of souls?" He looked so hostile, and I thought he was in for another homicidal fit, so I blew my whistle. The instant, however, that I did so, he became calm and said apologetically, "Forgive me, doctor. I forgot myself. You do not you do not need any help. I am so worried in my mind that I am apt to be irritable. If you only knew the problem I had to face, and that I am working out, you would pity and tolerate and pardon me. Pray do not put me in a strait waistcoat. I want to think, and I cannot think freely when my body is confined. I am sure you will understand." He had evident self-control, so when the attendant came in, I told them not to mind, and they withdrew. Rainfield watched them go. When the door was closed, he said with considerable dignity and sweetness, "Seward, you have been very considerate towards me. Believe me that I am very, very grateful to you." I thought it well and leave him in this mood. And so I came away. There is certainly something to ponder over in this man's state. Several points seem to make what the American interview calls a story. If one could only get them in a proper order. Here we are, will not mention drinking, fears the thought of being burdened with the souls of anything, has not has no dread of wanting life in the future, despises the meaner forms of life altogether, although he dreads being haunted by their souls. Logical, all these things point to one way. He he has assurance of some kind that he will acquire some higher life. He dread the consequences, the burden of a soul. Then it is a human life he took. And the assurance, meaningful God, the Count, has been to him, and there is some new scheme in terror afoot. Later I went after my round to Van Helsing and told him my suspicions. He grew very grave, and after thinking the matter over for a while, he asked me to take him to Rainfield. I did so. As we came to the door, we heard a lunatic within singing gallantly. Don't you just love it when you sneeze? Damn, the first crunch, I felt it in my brain. Oof. Wasn't expecting spice. What I get? No, after the stream you will get the nom nom. Yeah, I actually bought wet food to them today. Premium wet food. Hopefully they like it. Okay, let's see here. As he used to do in the time which now seems so long ago. When we entered, we saw with amazement that he had spread out his sugar as of old. The flies were thoroughly with the autumn were beginning to buzz into the room. We tried to make him talk of the subject of our previous conversation, but he would not attend. He went on with his singing as though we had not been present. He had got a scrap of paper that was folding it into a notebook. We had to come away as ignorant as we went in. His is a curious case indeed. We must watch him tonight. Letter, Mitchell's Sons and Candy to Lord Godalming, October 1. My lord, we are at all times only too happy to meet your wishes. We beg, with regards to the desire of your lordship, expressed by Mr. Hawkers on your behalf, to supply the following information concerning the sales and purchase of number 347 Piccadilly. The original... goodness. My voice just decided to jump off a cliff there. Oh, good lord. The original vendors are the executors of the late Mr. Abringbald Winter Suffleet. The purchases is a foreign nobleman, Count de Ville, who effected the purchase himself, paying the purchase money in notes over the counter. If you, lordship, will pardon us using so vulgar an expression, beyond this we know nothing whatever of him. We are, my lord, your lordship's humble servant, Mitchell's Sons and Candy. I wonder what kind of candy they sell. Dr. Seward's diary, October 2nd. I placed a man in the corridor last night and told him to make an accurate note of any sounds he might hear from Rhinefield's room, and gave him instructions that if there should be anything strange, he was to call me. After dinner, when we had all gathered around the fire in the study, Mrs. Hawkers having gone to bed, we discussed the attempt and discoveries of the day. Hawker was the only one who had any result, and we are in great hopes that his clue may be an important one. Before going to bed, I went around to the patient's room, and looked in through the observation trap. He was sleeping soundly. His heart rose and fell with regular respiration. This morning the man on duty reported to me that a little after midnight he was restless and kept saying his prayers somewhat loudly. I asked him if that was all. He replied that it was all he heard, and that was something about his manners so suspicious that I asked him point blank if he had been asleep. He denied sleep, but admitted having dozed for a while. It is too bad that the men cannot be trusted unless they are watched. Today Hawker is out following up his clue, and Art and Quincy are looking after horses. Godalming thinks that it will be well to have horses always in readiness, for when we get the information which we seek, there will be no time to lose. We must sterilize all the important earth between sunrise and sunset. We shall thus catch the Count at his weakest, and without a refuge to fly to. Van Helsing is off to the British Museum looking up some authorities on ancient medicine. The old physicians took account of things which their followers do not accept, and the professor is searching for witch and demon curses, which may be useful to us later. I sometimes think we must be all mad, and that we shall wake up sanity in waistcoats. In strained waistcoats. Waistcoats. God damn it. Okay, let's see. Later we meet again. We seemed at last to be on track, and our work of tomorrow may be at the beginning of the end. I wonder if Rainfield's quiet has anything to do with this. His mood has so followed the doings of the Count, that the coming destruction of the monster may be carried to him so subtle ways. If we could only get some hint as to what passed in his mind between the time of my arguments with him today and his resumption of fly-catching, it might afford us a valuable clue. He is so seemingly quiet for a spell, is he? The wild yell seemed to come from his room. The attendant came bursting into my room and told me that Reinfeldt had somewhat met with some accident. He had heard his yell, and when he went to found him lying on his face on the floor, all covered in blood. I must go at once. Ooh. Chapter 21. Dr. Seward's Diary, October 3rd. Let me put down with excitedness all that happened, as well as I can remember since last night I made an entry. Not a detail that I can recall must be forgotten. In all calmness I must proceed. When I came to Rainfield's room, I found him lying on the floor, on his left side, in a glittering pool of blood. When I went to move him, it became at once apparent that he had received some terrible injury. There seemed none of the unity of purpose between the part of the body which marks very lethargic sanity. As the face was exposed, I could see that it was horribly bruised, as though it had been beaten against the floor. Indeed, it was from the face wound that the pool of blood originated. The attendant who kept kneeling beside the body said to me that we had turned him over. Beside the body said to me as we turned him over, "I think, sir, his back is broken. See, both his right arms and leg, and the whole side of his face are paralyzed." How such a thing could have happened puzzled the attendant beyond measure. He seemed quite bewildered, and his brows were gathered as he said, "I cannot understand two things. He could mark his face like that by beating his own head on the floor. I saw a young woman do it once at the air-filled asylum before anyone could lay hands on her. And I suppose he might have broken his neck by falling out of the bed. If he got into an awkward kink. But for the life of me, I can't imagine how the two things occurred. If his back were broken, then he couldn't have beaten his head. And if his face was like that before the fall out of the bed, there would be marks of it. I said to him, "Go to Dr. Van Helsing and ask him to kindly come at once. I want him without an instant's delay." Maybe Dracula was trying to silence his servants. Who knows? The man ran off, and within a few minutes the professor in his dressing gown and slippers appeared. When he saw Rainfield on the ground, he looked nearly at him a moment and then turned to me. I think he recognized my thought in my eyes, for he said very quietly, manifestly for the ears of the attendant, a sad accident. He will need very careful watching and much attention. I shall stay with you myself, but I shall first dress myself. If you will remain, I shall in a few minutes join you. The patient was now breathing steadily. It was easy to see that he had suffered some terrible injury. When Helsing returned with extraordinary celebrity, bearing with him a surgical case, he was evidently been thinking and had his mind made up, for almost before he looked at the patient, he whispered to me, "Send the attendant away. We must be alone with him when he becomes conscious after the operation." I said, I think that will do now, Simons. We have done all we can, at the present. You had better go your rounds, and Dr. Van Helsing will operate. Let me know instantly if there anything unusual anywhere." The man withdrew, and we went into a strict examination of the patient. The wound on the face was superficial. The real injury was a depressed fracture of the skull, extending right up through the motor area. The professor thought for a moment and said, "We must reduce the pressure and get back to normal condition as far as can be." The rapidity of the suffusion shows the terrible nature of his injury. The whole motor area seemed affected. The suffusion of the brain will increase quickly, so we must the time at once, or it may be too late. Wait a minute. Oh my god, I just realized. Let's see here. Wait, if it's 24 chapter, that means I can't finish today. Or unless I extend the last hour, you know. Okay, let's see here. Pardon? As he was speaking, there was a soft tapping on the door. I went over and opened it and found the corridor without Arthur and Quincy in pajamas and slippers, and formally spoke. "I heard your man called up Dr. Van Helsing and tell him of an accident." I spoke Quincy, or rather called for him, as he was not sleeping. Things are moving too quickly and too strangely for sound sleep for any of us these times. I've been thinking that tomorrow night will not be seeing things as they have been. We'll have to look back and forth a little more than we have done. May we come in?" I nodded and held the door open till they had entered. Then I closed it again, and then Quincy saw the attitude and state of the patient and nodded. The horrible pool on the floor, and he said softly, "My God, what happened to him? Poor devil." I told briefly and added that we expected him would recover conscious after the operation for a short time. At all events, he went at once and sat down at the edge of the bed with Godalming beside him. We all watched in patience. "We shall wait," said Van Helsing, "just long enough to fix the best spot for Threep finds, so that we may most quickly and perfectly remove the blood clot. For it's evidently that the hemorrhage is increasing." The minute during which we waited passed with fearful slowness. I had a horrible sinking in my heart, and from Van Helsing's face I gathered that he felt some fear or apprehensions as to what was to come. I dreaded the words Rainer felt might speak. I was positively afraid to think, but the conviction of that was coming was to me, as I have read of men who have been heard the dead watch. The poor man's breathing became in uncertain gasp. Each instant he seemed as though he would open his eyes and speak, but then would follow a prolonged, stertorous breath, and he would relapse into a more fixed insensibility. In short, as I was too sick, bed, and dead, this suspense grew and grew upon me. I would almost hear the beating of my own heart, and the blood surging through my temples sounded like blows of the hammer. The silence finally became agonizing. I took at my companions one after another, and saw from their flustered faces and damp brows that they were enduring equal torture. There was a nervous suspense over us all. and there was overhead some dreaded bell would peal out powerfully when we could at least expect it. At last there came a time when it was evident that the patient was sinking fast. He might die at any moment. I looked up at the professor and caught his eyes fixed on mine. His face was stern as he spoke. There is no time to lose. His word may be worth many lives. I have been thinking so I stood here. It may be there a soul to stake. It may be there is a soul at stake. We shall operate just above the ear. I really hope they don't make me read in vivid description about the operation, because me and operation is a little bit queasy to say the least. Because I can actually imagine it fully, vividly, like I would be standing there watching, seeing, and smelling it. Let's hope the author isn't that evil. Okay, let's see here. Without another word, he made the operation. For a few moments, the breathing continued to be stertorous. Then and there came a breath so prolonged that it seemed as though it would be tear open his chest. Suddenly his eyes opened and became fixed in a wild, helpless stare. This was continued for a few moments. Then it was softened into a glad surprise as for his lips came a sigh of relief. He moved convulsively, and so he did, and as he did so, said, "I'll be quiet, doctor. Tell them to take off this strained waistcoat. I have had a terrible dream, and it has left me so weak that I cannot move. What is wrong with my face? It feels all swollen and smart dreadfully." He tried to turn his head, but when, with the effort, his eyes seemed to grow glassy again, and I gently put it back. Then Van Helsing said in a quiet, grave tone, "Tell us your dream, Mr. Rainfield." As he heard the voice, his face brightened, though it's mutilation, and he said, "That is Dr. Van Helsing. How good it is of you to be here. Give me some water. My lips are dry, and I shall tell you I dreamed." He stopped and seemed fainting. I called quickly to Quincy, "The brandy. It is in my study. Quickly." He flew and returned with a glass. The decanted of the brandy of the carafe of water. We moisturized the parched lips, and the patient quickly revived. Also, I wonder if that's true. I need to Google that later. If like brandy actually worked with, like, patient and stuff like that. Like, obviously they don't do it in this day and age because we actually have proper, healthcare. But I need to actually search if that actually had an effect. If I have some time over after the stream, I might. Yeah, let's see here. It seems, however, that his poor injured brain had been working in the interval, for when he was quite conscious he looked at me piercingly with an agonized, confused, which I shall never forget, and said, "I must not deceive myself. It was not a dream, but all a grim reality." Then his eyes roved around the room, as they caught the sight of the two figures sitting patiently on the edge of the bed as he went. If I were not sure already, I know I would know from them. For an instant his eyes closed, not with pain or sleep, but voluntarily, as though he was bringing all his faculties to bear. When he opened them again and said hurriedly, with more energy than he had yet spelled, "Quick, doctor, quick, I am dying. I feel that I have but a few minutes, and then I must go back to death or worse. Wet my lips with brandy again. I have something that I must say before I die, or before my poor crusted brain dies anyhow." "Thank you. It was the night after you left me, when I implored you to let me go away. I couldn't speak then, for I felt my tongue was tied. But I was sane then, except in a way, as I am now. I was in an agony of despair for a long time after you left me. It seemed hours. Then there came a sudden peace to me. My brain seemed to become cool again, and I realized where I was. I heard the dogs bark behind our house, but not where he was." As he spoke, Van Helsing's eyes never blinked, but his hand came out and met mine and gripped it hard. He did not, however, betray himself. He nodded and slightly and said, "Go on," in a lower voice. Ranfield proceeded. He came up to the window in the mist, as I had seen him often before, but he was solid then, not a ghost, and his eyes were fierce like a man when angry. He was laughing with his red mouth, and sharp white teeth glistened in the moonlight when he turned to look back over the belt of trees to where the dogs were barking. I wouldn't ask him to come in at first, though I knew he wanted to, just as he had wanted all along, when he began promising me things, not in words, but by doing them. He was interrupted by the word from the professor. "How?" By making them happen. Just as he used to send in the flies when the sun was rising, great big fat ones with steel and sapphire on their wings, and big moths in the night, with skull and crossbones on their backs. And Helsing nodded to him as he whispered to me unconsciously, "The Archephornian atropes of the Aspines, what you call them, death-head moths." The patient went on without stopping. Then he began to whisper, "Rats, rats, rats, hundreds, thousands, millions of them, and every one alive, and dogs to eat them, and cats too, all lives, all red blood, with years of life in it, and not merely buzzing flies." I laughed at him, for I wanted to see what he could do. Then the dogs howled away beyond the dark trees in his house. He beckoned me to the window. I got up and looked out, and he raised his hand and seemed to call out without using any words. A dark mass spread over the grass, coming on like a fan of flames of fire, and then he moved the mist to the right and left, and I could see that there were thousands of rats with their eyes blazed red, like his, only smaller. He held up his hand, and they all stopped, and I thought he seemed to be saying, all these lives will I give you, ay, and many more and greater, though countless ages, if you will fall down and worship me. And and then a red cloud, like a color of blood, seemed to close over my eyes, and before I knew it, I was found myself opening a sash and saying to him, "Come in, Lord and Master." The rats were all gone, but he slid into the room through the sash, though it was only opened an inch wide, just as the moon herself had often come in through the tiniest crack, and had stood before me in her size, all her size and splendorness. His voice was weak, so I moistened his lip with the brandy again, and he continued, but it seems as though his memory had gone on working in the interval of his story, was further advancing. I was about to call him back to the point, but Van Helsing whispered to me, "Let him go on. Do not interrupt him. He cannot go back. Maybe could not process at all if once he had lost the thread of his thought." He proceeded. All day I waited to hear from him, but he did not send me anything, not even a blowfly, and when the moon came up I was pretty angry with him. When he did slid in through the window, though it was shut, and did not even knock, got mad with him, sneered at me, and his white face looked out of the mist with his red eyes gleaming. And he went on as though he owned the whole place, and I was no one. He didn't even smell the same as he went by me. I couldn't hold him. I thought that somehow Mrs. Hawker had come into the room. The two men sitting on the bed stood up and came over, standing beside him so that he could not see them, but where they could hear better. They were both silent, but the professor started and quivered. His face, however, grew grimmer and sterner still. Winefield went on without noticing. When Mrs. Harker came in to see me this afternoon, she wasn't the same. It was like tea after a teapot has been watered. Here we all moved, but no one said a word. He went on. I didn't know that she was still, that she was here still. She spoke. She didn't look the same. I don't care for pale people. I like them with lots of blood in them, and her all seemed to have run out. I didn't think of it all the time. But when she went away, I began to think, and it made me mad to know that he had been taking the life out of her. I could feel that the rest quivered as I did, but we remained ourselves still. So when he began tonight, I was ready for him. I saw the mist stealing in. I grabbed it tight. I had heard that mad men have unnatural strength, and as I knew I was a madman, at times anyhow, I resolved to use my power, and he felt it too, for he had come out of the mist to struggle me. I held tight, and I thought I was going to win, for I didn't mean him to take any more of her life, till I saw his eyes. They were burned into me, and my strength became like water, slipped through it, and when I tried to cling to him, he raised me up and flung me down. And there was a red cloud before me, a noise like thunder, and mist seemed to steal away under the door. His voice was becoming faint, and his breath more stertorous. Van Helsing stood up instinctively. "We know the worst now," he said. He is here. And we know his purpose. It may not be too late. Let us be armed, the same as we were the other nights. But lose no time. There is not an instant to spare." There was no need to put our fear, nay, our conviction into words. We shared them in common. Oh, do the fluff. Okay. My screen just decided to go black, and I'm like, what? Okay, let's see. We shared them in common. We all hurried and took from our rooms the same things that we had done to enter Count's house. The professor had his ready, and we met in the corridor. He pointed them significantly as he said, "They never leave me, and they shall not, till this unhappy business is over. Be wise also, my friend. This is no common enemy that we deal with. At last, the dear Madame Mina should suffer." He stopped, his voice was breaking, and I do not know if rage or terror predominated in my own heart. Outside the hawker's door, we paused. Bart and Quincy held back, and the lad said, "Should we disturb her?" "We must," said Van Helsing grimly. If the door be locked, I shall break it in. May it not frighten her terribly. It is unusual to break into a lady's room. Van Helsing said solemnly, "You are always right, but this is life and death. All chambers are alike to the doctor, and even where they're not, they are all as one to me tonight, friend John." Goodness. Well, it is true. When I turn the handle, if the door does not open, do you put your shoulder down and shove, and you too, my friends, now. He turned the handle as he spoke, but the door did not yield. We threw ourselves against it. With a crash it burst open, and we almost fell headlong into the room. The professor did actually fall, and I saw across him as he gathered himself up from the hands and knee. What I saw appalled me. I felt my hair rise like a bristle on the back of my neck, and my heart seemed to stand still. In the moonlight was so bright that though the thick yellow blind the room was light enough to see. On the bed beside the window lay Jonathan Hawker, his face flushed and breathing heavily as though into a stupor. Kneeling on the edge of the bed facing outward was the white-clad figure of his wife. By her side stood a tall, thin man clad in black. His face was turned from us, but the instant we saw, we all recognized the Count in every way, even to the scar on his forehead. With his left hand he held both Mrs. Hawker's hands, keeping them away with her arms to full tension. His right hand gripped by her back of the neck, forcing her face down to his bosom. Her white nightdress was smeared with blood, and a thin stream trickled down the man's bare chest, which was shown by his torn-open dress. The attire of the two had a terrible resemblance of a child forcing a kitten's nose into a sausage of milk to compel it to drink. As he burst into the room, the Count turned his face, and the hellish look that I had heard described seems to leap into it. His eyes flamed red with devilish passion. The great nostrils of the white Aquilan's nose opened wide and quivered at the edges, and the white sharp teeth behind the lips um, of the blood-dripping mouth clamped together like those of a wild beast, with a wretch which threw his victim back upon the bed as he threw Hurley from a height. He turned and sprang at us, but by the time the professor had gained his feet and was holding towards him the envelope which contained the sacred wafer, the count suddenly stopped, just as poor Lucy had done outside the tomb, and cowered back. Further and further he backed. He cowered. As we lifted our crucifix, advanced, the moonlight suddenly failed as a great black cloud sailed across the sky. And when the gaslight sprang up under Quince's match, we saw nothing but a faint vapor. This, as we looked, trailed under the door. Which, with a recoil of it burst open, had swung back to its old position, and Helsing, Art, and I moved forward to Mrs. Hawker's, who by this time had drawn her breath with it had given a scream so wild, so ear-piercing, so despairing that it seems to me that now that it would ring in my ears till my dying days. For a few seconds she laid in her helpless attire and disarray. Her face was ghastly, with a pallor which was accentuated by the blood which smeared her lips, which smeared her lips and cheeks and chin. From her throat trickled a thin stream of blood. Her eyes were mad with terror. Then she put before her face her poor crushed hands, which bore their whiteness and red marks of the Count's terrible grip, and from behind them came a low, desolate wail, which made the terrible scream seem only the quick expression of endless grief. Van Helsing stepped forward and drew the covertly gentle around her body, whilst Arthur, after looking at her face for an instant, despairingly ran out of the room. Goodness. Let's see here. Van Helsing whispered to me, Jonathan, is it in a stupor such as we know the vampire can produce? We can do nothing with poor Madame Mina for a few moments till she recover herself. I must wake him. I dipped the end of the towel in cold water, and with it began to flick him on the face. His wife, all the while holding her face between her hands and sobbing in a way that was heartbreaking to hear. I raised the blind and looked out the window. It was much moonshine, and as I looked I could see Quincy Morris run across the lawn and hide himself in the shadow of a great yew tree. It puzzled me to think that the way he was doing this, but at the instant I heard Hawker's quick exclamation as he woke up, partially conscious, and turned to bed. On his face there might well be was a look of wild amazement. He seemed dazed for a few seconds, and then fully conscious seemed to burst up upon him at once, and he startled up. His wife was aroused by the quick movement and turned to him with her arms stretched out. I stirred to embrace him. Instantly, however, she drew them in again and put her elbows together, held her hands before her face, and shuddered till the bed beneath her shook. God's name, what does this mean? Hawke cried out. Dr. Seward, Dr. Van Helsing, what is this? What happened? What is wrong? Mina dear, what is it? What does the blood mean? Oh my God, has it come to this? And raising himself to his knees, he beat his hands wildly together. God, good God, help us. Help her, oh help her. With a quick movement he jumped from bed and began to pull on his clothes. All the men in his wake at the need for instant exertion. What have happened? Tell me all about it, he cried without pausing. Dr. Van Helsing, you love Mina, I know. Oh, do something to save her. I cannot have gone too far yet. Guard her while I look for him. His wife, though her terror and horror and distress, saw some short danger of him. Instantly forgetting her own grief, she seized hold of him and cried out, No, no, Jonathan, you must not leave me. I have suffered enough tonight, God knows. Without the dread of his harming you, you must stay with me. Stay with their friends who will watch over you. Her expression became frantic as she spoke, and he, yielding to her, she pulled him close, pulled him down, sitting on the bedside, and clutched to him fiercely. Van Helsing and I tried to calm them both. The professor held up his golden crucifix and said with wonderful calmness, Do not fear, my dear. We are here, and whilst this is closer to you, no foul thing can approach. You can safe for tonight. We must be calm and take counsel tonight together. She shuddered and was silent, holding down her head on her husband's breast. When she raised it, his white nightgown was stained with blood where her lips had touched, and where the thin, open wound in the neck had sent forth drops. The instant she saw it, she drew back, and with a loud wail and whispered amidst shocked sob, Unclean, unclean. I must touch him or kiss him no more. Oh, what? Oh, that it should be that it is I who am now his worst enemy, and who he may have most cause to fear. To this he spoke out resolutely. Nonsense, Mina. It is a shame to me to hear such words. I would not hear it from you, and I shall not hear it from you. May God judge me by my deserts and punish me for more bitter suffering than even this hour. If by any act or will of mine anything ever come between us. He put his arm and folded her to his breast, and for a while she lay there sobbing. He looked at us over her bowed head, with eyes that blinked damply above his quivering nostrils. His mouth was set as steel, After a while, his sobs became less frequent and more faint, and then he said to me, speaking with a studied calmness which I felt tried his nervous power to the utmost. And now, Dr. Stewart, tell me all about it. Too well I know the broad fact. Tell me all about that has been. Told him exactly what had happened, and he listened in seemingly impassiveness. But his nostril twitched, and his eyes blazed as I told how the ruthless hands of the Count had held his wife in that terrible and horrible position, with her mouth on the open wound on his breasts. It interested me, even at the moment, to see that whilst the face of the wild, white-set passion worked convulsively over the bowed head, hands tenderly and lovingly stroked the ruffled hair. Just as I had finished, Quincy and Goldaming knocked at the door. They entered in obedience to our summons. Van Helsing looked at me questionably. I understood him to mean if we were to take advantage of their coming to divert, if possible, the thought of the unhappy husband and wife from each other and from themselves. Some nodding acquiescence to him, he asked them what they had seen or done, to which Lord Godalming answered, I could not see him anywhere in passage, nor in any of our rooms. I looked in the study, but though he had been there, he had gone. He had, however, he stepped suddenly, looking at the poor drooping figure on the bed. Van Helsing said gravely, Go on, friend Arthur. We want here no more concealments. Our hope now is knowing all. Tell freely. Arthur went on. He had been there, and though it could only have been a few seconds, he made ray hay of the place. All the manuscript has been burned, and the blue flames were flickering amongst the white ashes. The cylinders of your phonograph, too, were thrown on the fire, and wax had helped the flame. Here I interrupted. Thank God there is another copy in the safe. His face lit up for a moment, but fell again as he went on. I ran downstairs then, but could not see no sign of him. I looked into Reinfeld's room, but there was no trace there except again he paused. Go on, said Hawker hoarsely. He bowed his head and moisturizing his lips with his tongue, and added, except that the poor fellow is dead. Mrs. Hawkers raised her head and looked from one to the other as she said solemnly, God's will be done. I could not but feel that Art was keeping back something, but as I took it that it was with a purpose, I said nothing. Van Helsing turned to Morris and asked, And you, friend Quincy, have you anything to tell? A little, he answered. It may be much, evidently, but at present I can't say. I thought it went to know, if possible, where the Count could go when he left the house, but I did not see him, but I saw a bat rise from Reinfeld's window and flap westward. I expect to see him in some shape to go back to Carfax, but he evidently sought some other lair. He will not be back tonight, for the sky is reddening in the east, and the dawn is close. We must work tomorrow. Said the latter words, though with shut teeth. For a space of perhaps a couple of minutes where there was silence, and I could fancy that I could hear the sound of our hearts beating. When Helsing said, placing his hand tenderly on Mrs. Hawker's head, "And now, Madame Mina, poor dear Madame Mina, tell us exactly what happened. God knows that I do not want that you be pained, but it is needed that we all know that we know all, for now more than ever has all work to be done quick and sharp and in deadly earnest. The day is close to us that must end all, if it may be so, and now is the chance that we may live and learn." The poor lady, dear lady shivered, and I could see the tension of her nerves as she clasped her husband closer to her and bent her head lower and lower till still on his breast. Then she raised her head proudly and held out the hand to Van Helsing, who took it in his, and after stopping and kissing it reverently, held it fast, and the other hand was locked in of her husband's, who held his other arm thrown around her protectively. After a pause in which she was evidently ordering her thoughts, she began. "I took the sleeping draught that you had been kindly given me, but for a long time it did not act. It seems to become more awakeful, and myriads of horrible fancies began to crowd in my own mind, for all of them connected with death and vampires, with blood and pain and trouble." Her husband involuntarily groaned as she turned to him and said lovingly, "Do not fret, dear. You must be brave and strong and help me through this horrible task. If you only knew what effort it is to me to tell of this fearful thing at all, you would understand how much I need your help." Well, I saw I must try to help the medicine to it work with my will. It was to do me any good, so I resolutely set myself to sleep. Sure enough, sleep must have soon have come to me, for I remember no more. Jonathan came in and had not wakened me, for he laid by my side when next I remember. There was in no more. There was in the room the same thin mist, the thin white mist that I had noticed before, but I had forgotten now. If you know of this, you will find it in my diary, which I shall show you later. I feel the same vague terror which had come to me before, the same sense of some presence. I turned to wake Jonathan, but found that he slept so soundly that I seemed as if it was he who had taken the sleeping drug, and not I. I tried, but I could not wake him. This caused me great fear, and I looked around terrified. Then, indeed, my heart sank with me beside the bed, as if he had stepped out of the mist, or rather, as if the mist had turned into his figure, for it had entirely disappeared. Stood a tall, thin man, all in black. I knew him at once from the description of the others, the waxed face and high, aquiline nose. One with the light fell in, a white thin line, and parted red lips, with the sharp white teeth showing between, and the red eyes that I had seen. That I seemed to see in the sunset on the window of S.T. Marge's shirt at Whitby. I knew, too, the red scar on his forehead where Jonathan had struck him. For an instant my heart stood still, and I could have screamed out, but only that I was paralyzed. In the pause he spoke in a sort of keen, cutting whisper, pointing as he spoke to Jonathan. Silence. If you make a sound, I shall take him and dash his brain out before your very eyes. I was appalled and was too bewildered to do or say anything. With a mocking smile, he placed one hand upon my shoulder and holding me tight, bared my throat with the other, saying as he did so, first a little refreshment to reward my exertion. And you may as well be quiet. It is not the first time, nor the second, that your vein has appeased my thirst. I was bewildered and strangely enough, I did not want to hinder him. I suppose it is part of the horrible curse that such is when his touch is on his victim. And oh my God, pity me. He placed his reeking lips upon my throat. Her husband groaned again. She clasped his hand harder, then looked at him pitifully, as if he were the injured one, and went on. I felt my strength fading, and I was in a half swoon. How long this horrible thing lasted, I know not, but it seems that long time must have passed before he took his foul, awful, sneering mouth away. I saw it dripped with fresh blood, and remembrance seemed for a while to overpower her, and she dropped and would have sunk down but for her husband's subtained arm. With a great effort she recovered herself and went on. Then he spoke to me mockingly, and so you, like the others, would play your brains against mine. You would help these men to hunt me and frustrate me in my design. You know now that they know is part already will know in fully before long what is to cross my path. They would have kept their energy for use closer to home, whilst they played wits against me who command nations and intrigued for and inquired for them and fought for them hundreds of years before they were born. I was countermining them, and you, their best beloved one, are now to me flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood, kin of my kin, my bountiful wine press for a while, and shall be later on my companion and my helper. You shall be avenged in turn, for not one of them but shall minister to your needs. But as yet you are to be punished for what you have done. You have aided in thwarting me, and now you shall come to my call. When my brain says come, to you shall cross land and sea to do my bidding, and to that end this. With that he pulled open his shirt, and with his long sharp nail opened a vein on his breast where the blood began to spurt out. And he took my hands in one of his and holding them tight, and with the other seized my neck and pressed my mouth to the wound, so that I must either suffocate or swallow some of the oh my God, what have I done? What have I done to deserve such a fate? I who have tried to walk in meekness and righteousness all of my days, God, pity me. Look down on a poor soul in worse than a mortal peril, and in mercy pity those whom she is dear. Then she began to rub her lips as though to cleanse them from pollution. As she was telling her terrible story, the eastern sky began to quicken, and everything became more and more clear. Harker was still and quiet, But over his face was an awful narrative went on, became grey looking with deepened and deepened with the morning light, till when first a red streak from the coming dawn shot up, fresh stood darkly out against the whitening hair. We have arranged that one of us is to stay within call of the unhappy pair till we can meet together and arrange about taking action. Of this I am sure. The sunrise today, no one more miserable house is all the great round of its daily course. And this is chapter 20 and 21. Now I'm gonna double check and see how many chapters there are, because I'm pretty sure there are only 2 chapters left. Let me check. Let's see. It has. Wait, what? Excuse you? 27? Yeah. Wait, that can't be right. Indeed, cat. Well then. I thought they said 24. Let's see. 40. So 2 chapters is 30 pages. Let's see. 300. It might only be like 3 chapters. It might be 27. But it might also only be. Maybe this specific one doesn't have the prologue with the or initial journal lead. I guess we just have to see then. But I definitely have to change from the final one, because this is obviously not the final one. I am. I guess we just have to see then. This might have been like the shorter version. But it feels kind of weird that it like includes everything, but like, you know, skip 3 chapters. Or maybe the 3 chapters is just the epilogue. And the actual story only have like 24 chapters. Could make sense. But yeah. But I will continue streaming in 2 hours from now, like as normal. And I will try to read all like the chapters today if I can. But if the worst comes to worst, then yeah. But it's definitely interesting. I did not expect Rainfield to actually die. But then again, I don't think it was in the movie. They tend to remove like certain things. But yeah. But I hope you guys have a good 2-hour break, and I appreciate you for watching. And in the meantime, make sure to grab a snack or something. And we will be back in 2 hours, continue reading. So I guess we will see how it turns out. So yeah. But in the meantime, take care, my dear hatchlings. Yep, bye bye.